We just saw a big announcement between Strive and Semler Scientific. They recently merged. From my knowledge, this was the first Bitcoin Treasury M&A deal. Do you think we'll see a lot more of this in the coming months?
Yeah, there will definitely be a lot of this in the coming years. It's a good question. In the coming months, don't know. Um, I think there's 90% of Bitcoin treasury companies won't really achieve a sustainable flywheel, and they will end up, you know, the ones that have an operating business that's profitable, they'll be fine, and they'll just have their Bitcoin treasury. The ones that don't have an operating business that's profitable, they will have drag every year as they're paying their bills using Bitcoin, and that means that they will trade down to an MNAV under 1, and then they become a target for acquisition. Um, and so we'll see. That's an opportunity for somebody else, and so we'll see those acquisitions happen, and it takes a specialized skill set. That's a particular kind of team and investment thesis, going around to do that messy work of acquiring companies that are in distress and cleaning up cleaning house. That's a whole thing. That's like a private equity kind of skill set that most Bitcoin treasury companies don't have. Smarter Web, I don't think we really have that in the sense that to do like a full clean house on a underwater Bitcoin treasury company. It's messy. So yeah, but there will be, I think, dedicated shops that do this, and that'll be their thesis and their approach to adding shareholder value. So we'll see how how that evolves.
Interesting. Yeah. We recently, I was definitely shocked by that, especially with it being similar. I think they're the second company in the US to start doing this. We recently had British Hodl on the show, and I was telling him how, there are other companies, trying to get to 1% Bitcoin, including Semler, and he was like, "Hey, I'm trying to get to 1% too." And I think it finally hit me that, like, okay, like, things just aren't as they seem necessarily always. And congrats to them. I'm glad that deal went through, and it seems like it was a deal that both parties seemed happy about. I saw
Yeah,
it come out with the team.
sort of interesting moment in time, I think, for both sides, especially for Strive. My understanding is their MNAV is like 4.2, and they're about to have their PIPE investors unlock, which I think will mean a lot of selling as they exit to collect their discount and be on their way. And I think Strive might have thought we're about to see our MNAV compress when that happens, so we might as well use it now. And they did. Meanwhile, Semler was trading at 0.8 MNAV, and the deal I think was a 210% premium. So that puts it 2.5 MNAV. They actually acquired them with shares at a 2.5 MNAV, even though they were trading it at 0.8. And the reason is that I think Strive was like, well, this is how we can use our MNAV before it gets compressed. And Semler, meanwhile, was like, well, your MNAV is about to get compressed a lot, so you need to pay us a lot more than 0.8 MNAV in order for us to say yes. And so that's how they, I think, found that balance. We'll see how that deal unfolds, and all the other ones in the future.
Yeah, great point on the pipe. The pipe deal there as well, and those shares coming to market soon, because I think that can help clear things up for people who are wondering, why didn't the stock Semler shoot up 210% the other day when the deal was announced? And I think some of those dynamics are at play, and that's that definitely had a lot to do with it there. I will say though, I think for me it was a bit strange because, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. We just went through this stretch where there seemed to be a new Bitcoin treasury company announced every week, and plenty of Bitcoin analysts, crypto analysts were saying every corporation will end up holding Bitcoin or even becoming a Bitcoin treasury company, and that we would eventually see thousands of these. And right now I'm like, so which one is it? Do we still expect that crazy growth to continue? or are we actually heading into a phase of consolidation?
Yeah, I think both. I think I think things are moving really fast in this industry, and because it's brand new. Um, and I think Metaplanet's very instructive here. They've sort of had like 4 cycles of MNAV expansion and compression. That is documented in their presentations and on their price chart over their 18 months of existence as a treasury company. And it's kind of amazing that that means they're doing a cycle every 4 months, every 3 months even, and that amounts to like Bitcoin has its 4-year cycles, and Metaplanet has had 4-month cycles. So it's like 12 times faster, um, because of the market having to digest all this growth really quickly. And meanwhile, the NAV floor keeps rising as a well-run Bitcoin treasury company keeps adding NAV, and it forces the market to digest things quickly because here comes the next wave of growth. So we'll see if that happens now for this sector globally going forward, or are we in for a prolonged period of digesting the growth of the first half of the year, really. I kind of bias towards the former. I think that there's been a lot of pain in a very short amount of time, and that's kind of what you'd expect for these assets. They take Bitcoin's volatility and they square it, and so that happens, and the way that manifests could either be more volatility on the price chart, or it could mean that everything happens in a compressed space of time. And it's kind of more that, I think, as we've seen with Metaplanet. So, I basically, I think we've reached the end of a bear market for Bitcoin treasury companies, even though it's only been 10 weeks. And we'll see what happens from there. There'll probably be some amount of consolidation and sideways and boring chop for a while. But the strong Bitcoin treasury companies that emerge out of this put themselves in a position for the next wave of growth. And at the same time, this sort of winter, I think, has killed a lot of these flywheels. And I think in a funny way, that's the market's way of pressure testing all the companies that said they were going to be Bitcoin treasury companies and said they were going to all get to 1% of all Bitcoin. 4 months ago, that's what everybody was saying, right? And then here comes the winter that really tests if you have what it takes to survive to the next summer, right? And maintain all the infrastructure and keep the flywheel going, keep investors excited because you still have what it takes. And most don't, won't, can't. And some will, and some will sort of continue on their growth trajectories to become, meaningful players in digital capital in their respective capital markets. Of course, I'm biased here, but I'm excited about where Smarter Web is in terms of all that. Our flywheel is still going. We are still, in pole position. We're actually, in terms of relative strength, stronger than we were 2 months ago because the smaller Bitcoin treasury companies in the UK have suffered more and their ability to raise capital has stopped, and their market cap has traded off more as a result of that. And so on a relative basis, Smarter Web is has greater market share than we did 2 months ago in the UK, in terms of Bitcoin treasury companies, and in terms of liquidity, volume traded even more, and that's really the lifeblood of a Bitcoin treasury company. So in a funny way, this winter has tested everybody, and I think the ones that survived and are still healthy will be rewarded, because they're in a position to actually grow, going forward. And maybe that's how this market goes for the next few years, of really rapid cycles of expansion and contraction, and testing the health of each of these companies every step of the way.
Hmm. I think that's a really great framework in terms of level setting on expectations. I think for people who are invested in these companies, for this is something that's so new. After going through something like this, you could, as an investor, you could really be bewildered. Especially if you're on Twitter every day, checking your accounts every day. But you got to level set those expectations, and I think there's a great framework to understand what could be actually going on here.